We're back and we're still in the legal basis of the music business, which is Module 2. We're working our way through quite a few lessons in this module. It's obviously a very important module. Lesson 5 is called Myths About Copyright. And I love to explode a few good myths, and there's quite a few myths going to be exploded here. Copyright has a lot of myths around it. One of which is that you need to register your copyright. Now, I've mentioned already in an earlier class that copyright protection is automatic upon the creation of an original work, giving that original work a material form. You don't need to register copyright. That's bottom line. There is no requirement to register copyright. Now, in a lot of places, you don't even have the opportunity of registering copyright. In a lot of countries, there is no copyright registration office. Here in Australia, where I'm recording this particular class, there's no copyright office. There's nowhere to go to register copyright. And yet, obviously, copyright exists here in Australia. So that's proof enough that you don't need to register copyright for copyright to exist. But even in countries where you can register copyright, like the US, the purpose of registering copyright is not to give you copyright. All the purpose of a copyright registration is to say that that work existed at a moment in time when you registered that work, and that that copyright work is something that you claim to be the copyright owner of. Now, I can claim to be Superman, but it doesn't make me Superman. It's as simple as that. I can claim to have written Bruce Springsteen's entire catalogue of songs, but I didn't. The copyright registration allows you to make that claim, but if that claim is easily defeated by evidence, you'll lose. The fact that you say, oh, but I've got this certificate that said that I claim to be the copyright owner on a particular date, of course that's not going to make you the copyright owner. So why would anyone do it? Well, they do it because it may be one piece of evidence in the event of a dispute. If you wrote a song, if you wrote a screenplay, if you wrote a manuscript for a book, if you took a photograph and you register that work for copyright, or rather you register that work at the Copyright Office, you can hand on heart say, yep, as at this particular date, this work existed and I can prove it. But that doesn't give you copyright. So that's the first myth. You don't have to register copyright to get copyright protection, assuming you are in fact the copyright owner. Similar kind of concept, the copyright notice. You're all familiar with the copyright notice, that little letter C with a circle around it, and for some reason people assume that has some magical quality. Of course it doesn't. Putting a copyright notice on a work does not make you the copyright owner. Of course it doesn't. This is my book. I wrote this book. It's called Welcome to the Jungle, Navigating the Music Business. And if I gave it to a person walking out on the street there and they got a Sharpie and they put a copyright notice on it and their name next to it in 2022, do you think that suddenly makes them the copyright owner? Of course not. And I would be able to prove, through some fairly obvious evidence, records on Amazon or people that bought my book or whatever, that back in 2017 I wrote that edition of that book. That person out on the street who put a copyright notice on it doesn't magically become the copyright owner. So again, why would people bother with a copyright notice? Exactly the same logic as the copyright registration. It is a notice. You are notifying the world that you claim to be the copyright owner. Now, if you are the copyright owner, it's probably a good idea to notify the world that you're the copyright owner. It says that this work, somebody has claimed this work, somebody says they are the copyright owner, and if they choose to go ahead and use that work without permission, well, there's a good likelihood that somebody is going to enforce or assert their copyright ownership. So a copyright notice is a good idea, but it doesn't make you the copyright owner. Another mistake that people often make. Now, there is another myth about copyright, and that is, I know how I get copyright. I send a copy to myself, and so I've got a registered mail or something that has a date on it that gives me copyright ownership? Of course not. Sending a copy to yourself, or sending a copy to your lawyer, or sending a copy to your best friend is not going to give you copyright protection. You clearly are only doing that because you've got some third-party evidence, whether it's the post office or a lawyer who of course you can trust, or your best friend, who's able to say that as at a particular date that work existed because they've got an email with that manuscript attached to it, or those song lyrics attached to it, or that MP3 file attached to it. It proves that the work existed, but it doesn't prove that it's your original work. I could send an MP3 of Beyonce's latest hit. I could send that to my lawyer, and that's not going to make me the copyright owner. It just means that they received a file on a particular date. Another myth. Another myth is that if you register your work with your performing rights organisation in your country, in Australia that would be APRA, in America that would be ASCAP or BMI. We'll talk about the role of performing rights organisations in a separate class, but the mere fact of registering a song with a performing rights organisation does not make you the copyright owner. So if you're in a band and you think, it's a race to see which band member can register that song first, and whoever registers it first owns the copyright, is a complete myth. The ownership of copyright in a song, in a recording, whatever it might be, is not determined by whoever registers it first with your local national performing rights organisation. The only reason people are going to register a song with a performing rights organisation is because they might generate some income from that song, and the performing rights organisation wants to know who to pay. But if I was to join, ASCAP in America and claim to be the owner of Bruce Springsteen's catalogue, and I think, wow, what a great way to get rich, I'll claim those songs, and all of the royalties that he generates will come to me, I can be pretty certain that his lawyer will be onto me fairly quickly, and I can also be pretty certain that the performing rights organisation will go, I don't think N.W.A wrote all these songs. And I think they would be right. Sadly, that is the case. So, just to wrap things up on this, I really just wanted to explode a few of those myths. A lot of people work on the assumption that, those strange ways of getting copyright protection actually work. That's pub talk or bar talk or nightclub talk, or certainly not talk of anyone who's actually accurate. So there is no way to sneakily become the copyright owner of a work by any of those methods. It simply doesn't work like that. And the value of keeping those type of records is that you do have some sort of evidence in the event of a dispute, but it does not provide you with copyright ownership. So if, some other artist in a band room in a bar on the Sunset Strip tells you, hey, you know how you get copyright ownership? You send a copy to your lawyer. Maybe you should tell that dude to maybe have another drink and do some research. In fact, tell them to go and do this course. That's a great idea. All right, that's the myths of copyright exploded, and happy to move on now to the next lesson. Looking forward to seeing you there.